Something new in old space. Rovik stood on the bridge of his warship and stared at nothing. The same nothing he had stared at for 12 cycles. Relay Gate 07 floated in the dark like a dead eye, a ring of ancient metal wider than a city, older than any species alive, and completely useless. No one had come through it in over 400 cycles. No one even remembered why it was built so far from everything else. His patrol here was a punishment. He knew that. The Accord Council did not send their best commander to watch a dead gate unless they wanted him out of the way for a while. He had spoken too honestly at the last council meeting. That was his mistake. Honesty was not rewarded in the Accord. Obedience was. He was about to turn away from the viewport when every alarm on his ship screamed at the same time. The gate was waking up. Rovik grabbed the edge of his console with two of his forearms and watched as the ancient ring began to glow. Light crawled along patterns that had been dark for centuries. The metal groaned, a sound that traveled through the vacuum somehow, vibrating through the hull of his ship like a heartbeat. His crew froze, every one of them. Then the center of the gate tore open like a wound in space, and something came through. It was small. That was the first thing Rovik noticed. Compared to the warships of the Accord, this vessel was barely worth mentioning. It was rough and ugly, covered in scorch marks and patched metal. It moved on fuel burn engines, technology so old that most Accord species had abandoned it 1,000 cycles ago. Smoke trailed behind it like a dying breath. But it was moving, steady, calm, like it had every right to be there. "Commander," his sensor officer said, voice shaking, "the vessel is broadcasting." "What kind of signal?" "Mathematical, prime number sequences." Then they switched. "They are cycling through known Accord communication frequencies." Rovik felt something cold move through his chest. A species that had never been seen before was already trying to learn their language. Not in months, not in weeks, in the time it took to cross the distance from the gate to his fleet. He opened a channel. "Unknown vessel, you have entered Accord space. Identify yourself." There was a pause. Then a voice came through, clear, warm, and strangely calm for someone surrounded by 200 warships. "This is Captain Tejo of the exploration vessel Dawnbreaker. We come from a planet called Earth. We are not here to fight. We are here to say hello." Then the voice added, "Also, your formation is very impressive. We only have the one ship, so I hope you will not be too disappointed." Rovik stared at the speaker in his console. He looked at his second officer. His second officer looked back. Neither of them knew what to do with a species that made jokes while surrounded. He ordered the fleet to escort the vessel to Accord Station Prime. It was protocol. When something unknown appeared, you brought it to the center, where it could be watched, studied, and controlled. Rovik told himself this was about security. But part of him, a part he did not want to examine, was simply curious. But Dawnbreaker followed without complaint. It kept pace with the escort fleet, even though it was slower, adjusting its path with small, precise corrections. Rovik watched it on his tactical display the entire journey. He noticed things. He noticed that the ship's external sensors were active, constantly scanning every Accord vessel in the fleet. Not aggressively. More like someone walking through a market and looking at everything on the shelves. Hungry for information. He noticed that within 2 hours of first contact, the human communication officer, the one called Jinnu, was already forming broken but understandable sentences in Accord common tongue. 2 hours. The last species to enter the Accord had taken 6 months to manage basic greetings. He noticed that the ship, despite being old and damaged, was held together with a strange kind of care. Every patch, every weld, every burnt panel had been repaired by hand. Not replaced, repaired. These beings did not throw things away. They fixed them. They held on. When the fleet arrived at Station Prime, half the station was already watching. News of the gate activation had spread faster than light. Species that had not spoken to each other in decades were standing side by side on observation decks, staring at the small, ugly ship as it docked. The humans stepped out, and the station held its breath. Only 5. Tejo walked in front. He was average height by human standards, which made him shorter than almost every species on the station. He looked around at the massive halls, the alien faces, the towering architecture, and he smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a diplomatic smile, a real one, like a man who had been traveling a long time and was happy to finally see something new. Behind him came Yuna, already looking at the walls, the lights, the power conduits running along the ceiling. Her eyes moved like someone reading a book very fast. Jinu walked quietly beside her, listening to every conversation around them, his lips moving slightly as he practiced words under his breath. Hana carried a medical bag over one shoulder and kept glancing at every alien they passed, not with fear, but with the soft focus of someone who wanted to understand how their bodies worked. And at the back walked Dohyun, saying nothing, seeing everything. 5 humans. No army behind them. No fleet waiting at the gate. The Accord had welcomed new species before. It always went the same way. The new species would be afraid, or aggressive, or desperate. They would beg for protection, or demand territory, or try to prove they were strong enough to matter. The Accord had a system for all of it. Centuries of protocol, centuries of control. But these 5 walked through the halls of the most powerful station in the galaxy, like they were visiting a neighbor's house. Calm, polite, looking at everything, touching nothing, smiling. Rovik followed them from the security feeds and felt that cold feeling in his chest again. Deep in the station's archive levels, a small Fen scholar named Tilly watched the same feeds. Her many eyes blinked rapidly as she pulled up an old file, a record so ancient it was nearly corrupted. A warning from the founders, the species that had built the relay gates and then vanished. She read the words on her screen and felt her legs go weak. When the gate of forgetting opens, the ones who walk through will change everything. Tilly looked back at the feed. The human captain was shaking hands with a confused Accord official, still smiling that easy smile. She opened a new file and began to type. She did not know what she was recording yet. She only knew that it mattered. She titled the file, The Human Effect. And on the docking ring, Tejo looked up at the vast, ancient station above him, at the hundreds of alien species watching from every window and balcony, and he thought the same thing he always thought when he arrived somewhere new. Let's see what we can learn. Upheld. They don't follow the rules. Unquote. The Accord gave the humans quarters in the lower rings of Station Prime. It was the worst section. Small rooms, dim lights, recycled air that tasted like metal. Every new species started there. It was supposed to remind them of their place. Tejo looked at the rooms, nodded, and said, "These are fine, thank you." The Accord official who escorted them waited for the complaint. It never came. He left feeling strangely off balance, like he had prepared for a storm that turned out to be a clear sky. The humans settled in. They did not protest. They did not send angry messages to the council. They unpacked their things, ate their rations, slept in shifts, and then, quietly, without asking permission, they began to explore. That was when things started to change. Yuna found the engineering bay on the 4th day. She had been walking the station corridors, looking at everything with those fast-moving eyes, when she came across a group of Fen engineers arguing over a reactor display. The reactor powered an entire section of the station's lower ring, and it had been running at 40% efficiency for as long as anyone could remember. "Why only 40%?" Yuna asked. The Fen engineers looked at her. She was small, she was new, she was from the lowest tier species on the station. That is the standard configuration, one of them said, in the slow, careful way someone speaks to a child. Can I look at it? They let her, partly because they were curious, and partly because they did not think she could do anything anyway. Yuna spent 3 hours inside the reactor's maintenance tunnels. She came out covered in coolant fluid, holding a data tablet she had borrowed from one of the Fen. The reactor's flow regulators had been installed in a pattern designed for a different model, probably centuries ago, when the station was built. No one had ever thought to check, because the reactor worked. Not well, but it worked. Yuna adjusted the regulators. She rerouted 2 coolant lines. She bypassed a filter that had been restricting flow for no reason anyone could explain. The reactor jumped to 92% efficiency. The Fen engineers stood in silence and stared at the numbers on their displays. One of them began making a sound that Yuna later learned was Fen crying, not from sadness, from the feeling of watching something you thought was impossible happen right in front of you. Word spread fast. 2 days later, Jinnu sat in on a diplomatic meeting. He had been given observer status, which meant he could watch, but not speak. The meeting was between the Velen trade delegation and a group of minor species requesting better access to shipping lanes. It was, like most Accord meetings, an exercise in powerful species saying no in complicated ways. Jinnu sat in the back and listened. He did not take notes. He did not fidget. He simply listened with the complete, focused attention of someone who understood that words were only half of any conversation. After the meeting, he found the minor species ambassador standing alone in a corridor, looking defeated. He did not reject your proposal, Jinnu said quietly. The ambassador turned. What? The Velen delegate. He did not say no. He said the matter required further review within existing frameworks. In Velen diplomatic language, that means he personally agrees but needs political cover from his own council to support you. If you submit the same proposal with a minor change, frame it as an extension of an existing agreement rather than a new request, he can approve it without appearing to lose face. The ambassador stared at Jinnu for a long time. How long have you been in the Accord? 4 days. The ambassador blinked. Then he went back to his office and rewrote the proposal. It was approved the following morning. No one talked about it publicly, but every ambassador on the station heard the story within a week. The human who could listen to a meeting and hear what no one was saying. Then there was Hana. She found the sick child in the lower markets on a rest day. A Fen family huddled in a corner, their small daughter lying on a blanket, barely breathing. Hana knelt beside them without being asked. She scanned the child with her medical equipment and identified the disease, a respiratory infection that attacked the Fen's delicate lung structures. The Accord physicians say there is nothing to be done, the mother said. The survival rate is 12%. Hana opened her medical bag. She had studied Fen biology from the station's public database over the past 3 days. The infection was aggressive, but it followed a pattern she recognized, similar to diseases humans had fought on Earth for centuries. She adapted a basic anti-inflammatory compound, adjusted the dosage for Fen body chemistry, and added a simple breathing treatment. This might help, she said. The child recovered in 2 days. Hana did not announce what she had done. She did not file a report or seek credit. She simply gave the family instructions and moved on. But the mother told her neighbors. And soon, aliens from across the lower rings were quietly showing up at the human quarters, asking for the healer. Hana helped every single one of them. And then there was Do-hyun. Goron was the largest Dreth on the station, a mountain of gray stone-like skin and muscle, with fists that could crack hull plating. He was an enforcer, a warrior, and he had never lost a fight. He found the humans amusing. Small, soft, no claws, no armor, no venom. He wanted to see what they could do. He challenged Do-hyun in front of a crowd in the station's combat training hall. Do-hyun looked up at the Dreth, who was 3 times his size. He nodded once and stepped onto the mat. Goron charged like a landslide, fast for something so massive. He swung a fist that could have gone through a wall. Do-hyun stepped to the side. Not far, just enough. Goron's fist passed through empty air. Before the Dreth could recover, Do-hyun placed one hand on Goron's arm and redirected his own momentum against him. Goron stumbled forward. He attacked again, and again. Each time, Do-hyun moved just enough. He did not hit back. He watched. He studied. He learned the rhythm of Goron's attacks. The slight drop of his shoulder before a left strike. The half-second pause before he kicked. On the 7th exchange, Do-hyun moved inside Goron's guard, hooked his leg behind the Dreth's knee, and used Goron's own weight to bring him down. The floor shook when Goron hit it. Silence. Goron got up and attacked with real fury. Do-hyun put him down again, and then a 3rd time. The hall was absolutely quiet. A species that had been in the Accord for less than 2 weeks had just put the best Dreth fighter on the floor, not with strength, but with something no one in the room could name. Do-hyun offered Goron his hand. Goron stared at it. Then, slowly, he took it. That night, Rovik sat in his quarters and read the reports. The reactor, the diplomacy, the child, the fight, all in less than 2 weeks. All from 5 individuals, with no army, no fleet, no political power. He opened a secure channel to Asara, the oldest and most powerful diplomat in the Accord. "We have a problem," he said. Asara's luminous form flickered on the screen. She was ancient, an energy being who had existed for millennia. She had seen empires rise and fall. Nothing surprised her. "Tell me," she said. Rovik sent her the reports. She read them in silence. When she finished, she was quiet for a very long time. "Asara," Rovik said. "I am here," she replied. "I am simply experiencing something I have not felt in a very long time." "What is that?" "Uncertainty." In the archives, Tilly added another entry to her growing file. She had been watching everything, recording everything. She wrote, "They have been here for 13 days. They have not raised a weapon, filed a political claim, or demanded a single thing. And yet, nothing on this station is the same as it was before they arrived. I do not think they are even trying. I think this is simply what they are." She paused, then added one more line. "I think that is what makes them terrifying." What happens when you can't predict them? The fear started quietly, the way all real fear does. It did not begin with weapons or threats. It began with conversations in private rooms, with glances exchanged across council tables, with questions that no one wanted to ask out loud. The humans had been on Station Prime for 1 month, and the Accord was splitting in 2. On one side were the species who saw opportunity. 3 minor-tier species had already sent formal requests for human consultation. The Fen wanted Yuna in their engineering bays. 2 agricultural worlds wanted Hana's medical knowledge. A trade coalition wanted Jinnu to sit in on their negotiations. The humans were becoming the most requested advisors on the station, and they had no rank, no title, and no political standing at all. On the other side were the species who saw danger, and leading them was the Dreth. Goron had returned from his defeat in the combat hall, and he had told his people what happened. But the story that spread was not the one he told. In the version his commanders heard, a small human had humiliated the greatest Dreth warrior using unknown combat techniques. In the version the Dreth Council heard, humans possessed unnatural reflexes and the ability to learn fighting styles in real time. By the time the story reached the Dreth homeworld, it had become a warning. The Dreth were not a species built for uncertainty. They understood strength, they understood power, they understood hierarchy. What they did not understand was a species that break every rule of the galaxy simply by being helpful. A senior Dreth official named Vorton stood before the Accord Council and made the case for removal. "They have been here for 30 days, he said, his stone-gray face hard and still. "In that time, they have disrupted our engineering standards, undermined our diplomatic processes, practiced unauthorized medicine, and demonstrated combat abilities that no new species should possess. They are a threat to the stability of the Accord." The council chamber was silent. Rovik sat in his seat and said nothing. He had read the same reports Vorton had. But where Vorton saw danger, Rovik saw something more complicated. He saw a species that had not asked for anything, demanded nothing, and threatened no one. Every disruption the humans had caused was the result of someone asking them for help, and the humans saying yes. That was the part that kept Rovik awake at night. Not what the humans had done, but why. In the Accord, knowledge was power. You did not share power. You hoarded it. You traded it. You used it to climb. That was how the system worked. That was how it had always worked. Yuna was sharing engineering knowledge for free. She had taught Fen engineers techniques that could have been sold for enormous amounts. When asked why, she had looked confused and said, "Because they needed it." As if that were the only reason anyone would ever need. Jinnu was translating honestly. In the Accord, translators were political tools. They softened words, hid meanings, and served whoever paid them. Jinnu translated everything exactly as it was said, including the manipulation, the hidden insults, and the real intentions behind polite words. Diplomats were furious. Minor species were, for the first time, hearing the truth. Free knowledge, honest words, these were not weapons, but they were destroying the system more effectively than any fleet ever could. Essara understood this. She was old enough to see the pattern. She called Rovik to a private meeting in her chambers, a room filled with soft light and the quiet hum of her energy form. "The Dreth are not wrong to be afraid," she said. Rovik looked at her sharply. "You agree with them?" "I agree that the humans are dangerous, but not in the way Vorton believes. He thinks they are a military threat. They are not. They are a structural threat. Their very nature challenges the way the Accord operates. Free knowledge breaks hierarchy. Honest translation breaks political control. Medical care for all breaks the tier system. They do not need weapons to change everything. They only need to keep being what they are." Rovik was quiet for a long time. "So what do we do?" Essara's light dimmed slightly. "I do not know, and that is what frightens me." The Dreth did not wait for a council vote. Vorton arranged a provocation. He sent a squad of 6 Dreth soldiers to the lower rings with simple orders. Confront the humans, create an incident, give the council a reason to act. Dohyun saw them coming. He had been watching the Dreth movements for days. The patrols that passed the human quarters too often. The officers who lingered near the corridors where Yuna worked. The quiet conversations that stopped when a human entered the room. He knew what was coming before it arrived. He told Teho. Teho listened, thought for a moment, and gave a simple order. Nobody throws the first punch, but nobody takes a second one either. The confrontation happened in the market corridor outside the human quarters. 6 Dreth soldiers, each one twice the size of any human, blocked the path. The market around them went quiet. Vendors stopped selling. Shoppers pressed against the walls. Everyone watched. Teho stepped forward, with his crew behind him. He looked up at the Dreth squad leader and said, "Good evening. Can we help you?" The squad leader shoved him. Teho stepped back, absorbed the push, and stayed on his feet. He did not raise his hands. He did not shout. He looked at the squad leader with the same calm expression he had worn when he first stepped out of the Dawnbreaker. "I understand you are upset," Teho said. "I would like to talk about it." The Dreth soldiers laughed. The squad leader shoved Jinnu, Then another soldier pushed Hana hard enough to send her medical bag clattering across the floor. The market held its breath. Do-hyun stepped forward. He did not run. He did not shout. He moved with the quiet certainty of water flowing downhill, and placed himself between Hana and the dressed soldier who had pushed her. He was half the soldier's height and a fraction of his weight. He looked up and met the soldier's eyes. Then he spoke in perfect dreth, not broken dreth, not accented dreth. The deep, rumbling language of the dreth warrior caste, with every tone and click in exactly the right place. You have one chance to walk away with your honor. The market was absolutely silent. The dreth squad leader stared at Do-hyun. He had expected fear. He had expected anger. He had expected the small, soft human to cower or fight. He had not expected this, a creature who weighed less than his arm, standing perfectly still, speaking his sacred language, and giving him a choice instead of a challenge. The squad leader looked at his soldiers. He looked at the crowd around them. He saw the cameras, the observers, the dozens of alien species watching from every angle. He saw that every eye on the station was on this moment. He turned and walked away. His soldiers followed. The footage spread across the station within the hour. It reached the wider Accord network by nightfall. By the next morning, every species in the galaxy had seen it. 5 humans surrounded by soldiers twice their size, attacked and shoved, responding with nothing but calm words and a single sentence in perfect dreth. The reactions were immediate. Some species were amazed, some were confused, some were more afraid than ever. Asara watched the footage 17 times. Then she went to the human quarters. Taeho was sitting alone, reading something on a data tablet. He stood when she entered, and offered her a seat, even though her energy form did not need one. She appreciated the gesture. "I need to ask you something," Asara said, "and I need you to answer honestly." "Of course. What are you?" Taeho thought about the question, not quickly, not dismissively. He sat with it the way someone sits with something heavy. "We are just people," he said finally, "from a small, difficult world. It was hot and cold, and full of things that wanted to kill us. We did not have claws, or armor, or venom. We did not have 4 arms, or stone skin. We had each other, and we had stubbornness. Our whole history is the story of people who refused to give up, even when giving up made more sense." He paused and looked at Asara with those strange, warm human eyes. "That is all we are. People who are too stubborn to stop trying." Asara left the human quarters and returned to her chambers. She sat in silence for a long time. In the archives, Tilly added a new entry to her growing record. "They are not conquerors. They are not saints. They are not warriors or diplomats or scholars, though they can be all of these things when they need to be. They are survivors. And I am beginning to believe that there is nothing in this galaxy more dangerous than a species that simply refuses to stop. The old way breaks." The first gate went dark on a Tuesday. Relay Gate 14, one of the busiest trade routes in the Accord, simply stopped working. One moment, ships were passing through it normally. The next, the ancient ring went cold and silent, and every vessel in transit was thrown back into normal space with enough force to crack their hulls. 37 ships were damaged. 12 crew members died. Before the Accord Council could even schedule an emergency meeting, Gate 09 began to flicker, then Gate 22, then Gate 05. One by one, the relay gates that held the galaxy together started failing. Panic came fast. The Accord had existed for centuries on one foundation, the relay gate network. Every trade route, every communication line, every military patrol, every supply chain depended on the gates. Without them, systems were islands. Without them, the galaxy was a collection of disconnected worlds that could not reach each other, could not feed each other, could not help each other, and no one knew how to fix them. That was the terrible truth that no one wanted to say out loud. The gates had been built by the founders, the ancient species that had created the network and then vanished, leaving no instructions, no manuals, no explanation. The Accord had maintained the gates for centuries, but maintenance was not understanding. They knew which buttons to press. They did not know why the buttons worked. The council met in emergency session. 12 species, 12 delegations, 12 sets of opinions. They argued, they blamed, they pointed fingers at each other and at the humans. Vortan, the Dreth official, stood and declared that the crisis had started when the humans came through Gate 07. They broke the network, he said. Their arrival triggered the cascade. The solution is obvious. Remove them. The argument consumed 3 days. While the council talked, 2 more gates went dark. 3 star systems were cut off completely. Millions of beings were stranded without supplies, without medicine, without communication. Tejo watched the crisis from the human quarters and felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders. He gathered his crew. They are not going to solve this in time, he said. Not like this, not by committee. Yuna had already been studying the gates since her first week on the station. She had read every piece of public data available, and she had noticed things the Accord engineers had missed, not because she was smarter, but because she looked at things differently. The gates are not just machines, she said. The energy signatures are organic. I think they are alive, or partly alive, some kind of biological mechanical hybrid. Can you fix them? Tejo asked. I do not know, but I know I cannot fix them from here. I need to get to a gate. Tejo did not hesitate. He did not file a request with the council. He did not wait for permission. He stood up and made assignments. Yuna, take a shuttle to the nearest failing gate. Take Tilly with you. She knows the founder records better than anyone. Genu, I need you on communications. The cutoff systems need to know someone is working on this. Find a way to reach them without the gates. Hana, there are going to be medical emergencies in the stranded systems. Start training every medic on this station in triage and emergency response. Dohyun, Yuna is going to need protection. The Dreth faction will try to stop her. No one argued. No one asked questions. They moved. Yuna and Tilly reached Gate 11 in 6 hours. The gate was still active, but failing, its light flickering like a dying candle. Yuna suited up and went inside the maintenance tunnels of the ancient structure, while Tilly guided her using founder texts she had spent her entire life studying. What Yuna found inside the gate changed everything she understood. The gate's core was not a machine. It was a living thing, a vast network of organic tissue wrapped around crystalline structures, pulsing with a slow, weak rhythm. It was breathing, barely. The tissue was damaged, not from any outside force, but from age, from neglect. The Accord had maintained the mechanical parts of the gates for centuries and completely ignored the biological components. The living heart of the network was dying of loneliness and starvation. It needs to be fed, Yuna whispered. It needs energy, biological energy, not fuel, something alive. She thought about it the way she thought about every problem, not with the tools she had been given, but with the tools she could make. Human medicine understood biological systems. Human engineering understood machines. The gates were both. She was possibly the only person in the galaxy who would think to treat a machine like a patient. She synthesized a nutrient compound from her ship's medical supplies, a cocktail designed for human cellular repair, and modified it for the gate's biological tissue. She injected it into the organic core. The gate shuddered. The ancient metal groaned, and then slowly the light came back, not flickering, steady, stronger than it had been in centuries. Tilly watched from behind Yuna, her many eyes wide, her small body trembling. You healed it, she said. You actually healed it. Not healed, Yuna said. Not yet. This is a temporary fix, but now I understand what they need. While Yuna worked on the gates, Jinnu was solving a different problem. The cut-off systems had no gate access, which meant no faster-than-light communication. The Accord had no backup system, because they had never imagined needing one. The gates had always worked. Jinnu built one anyway. He used old human radio technology, long-range signal broadcasting, the kind Earth had used before it developed faster methods. It was slow, it was crude. The Accord would have called it primitive. But it worked without the gates, and right now, that was all that mattered. Within 12 hours, Jinnu had established contact with 2 of the 3 cut-off systems. The first thing he sent was not a military message or a political statement. It was a simple sentence. Help is coming. Hold on. Hana transformed the station's lower medical bay into a training center. She taught alien medics concepts they had never heard of. Triage, the idea of sorting patients by urgency when resources are limited. Most Accord species had never faced a mass emergency. Their medical systems were designed for normal conditions, for one patient at a time, for orderly treatment in orderly rooms. Hana taught them what humans had learned through centuries of disasters. When everything falls apart, you save who you can, as fast as you can. The alien medics struggled at first. The concept was harsh. Choosing who to treat first meant accepting that some would wait. But Hana showed them that the alternative was worse. Without triage, everyone waited, and more died. You cannot save everyone at once, she told them gently, but you can save more people faster if you are willing to make hard choices. Dohan faced his own battle. A group of Dreth hardliners, loyal to Vorton, attempted to sabotage Yuna's work at Gate 11. They sent a strike team to disable her shuttle and force her to abandon the repair. Dohan was waiting for them. He did not fight 6 Dreth soldiers alone. He did not need to. He had spent his time on the station building something no one expected. Relationships. The Dreth warriors who had watched his sparring match with Gorin had come to respect him. 3 of them had trained with him privately. When the strike team arrived, they found Dohyun standing beside 4 Dreth soldiers who had chosen to protect the humans. The strike team withdrew without a shot. Yuna worked for 3 days straight. She moved from gate to gate, treating each one like a patient, diagnosing the biological decay, synthesizing nutrients, feeding the living cores. But she did more than patch the wounds. She studied the gate's own repair mechanisms, systems that had been dormant because no one had ever activated them. The gates were designed to heal themselves. They had always had the ability. They had just never been given what they needed to start. Yuna gave them the spark. One by one, the gates came back online, not just functioning, growing, repairing themselves, getting stronger. The network that had been slowly dying for centuries was, for the first time, alive again. Tilly found something else in the deepest core of Gate 11, a message, buried in the biological tissue like a memory stored in muscle. It was from the Founders. She translated it with shaking hands. The system was designed to fail. It was designed to test whether those who used it could grow beyond maintaining what they were given, whether they could understand what they had. Most never do. Tilly sat in the maintenance tunnel of an ancient gate, surrounded by living technology that was healing for the first time in centuries, and she understood. The Founders had not abandoned the galaxy. And for centuries, the Accord had failed it, maintaining without understanding, preserving without growing, until the humans came. Rovik stood before the Accord Council and spoke against the Dreth motion to expel the humans. His voice was steady, and his forearms were still at his sides. I have commanded fleets for 30 cycles, he said. I have fought wars, defended borders, and enforced the laws of this Accord. In all that time, I have never seen a species respond to crisis the way these humans have. Not with power, not with politics, with purpose. They did not wait for our permission. They did not ask for payment. They simply saw that something was broken, and they fixed it. He looked at Vorton. If we cast them out after what they have done, we do not deserve to call ourselves an alliance. We deserve to fall. The vote was called. The motion to expel the humans failed, 9-3. Tejo heard the result and nodded once. Then he went back to work. Nothing acted the same. 6 months after 5 humans walked through a forgotten gate on a ship held together with patches and stubbornness, the Galactic Accord was unrecognizable. It did not happen all at once. It happened the way sunrise happens, slowly at first, then all at once, until you looked around and realized the darkness was gone, and you could not remember exactly when it left. Yuna's engineering bay was no longer in the lower rings. The council had moved her to the central technical hub after the gate crisis, and she had immediately done something that scandalized half the station. She opened the doors. Any engineer, from any species, from any tier, could walk in and learn. There were no entrance requirements. There were no fees. There were no political tests or loyalty oaths. If you wanted to learn how things worked, Yuna would teach you. The old system of hoarding knowledge had survived for centuries because everyone accepted it as natural. Of course, the powerful species kept the best technology to themselves. Of course, advancement was traded for political loyalty. Of course, knowledge flowed upward and never down. That was how the galaxy worked. Then a small human woman, with coolant fluid permanently stained into her fingertips, started giving it away for free, and the system cracked like ice in warm water. Fen engineers built better reactors. Minor species worlds upgraded their medical facilities. Agricultural planets redesigned their food distribution systems using techniques that the upper-tier species had kept locked away for generations. The improvements spread outward in waves, each one making the next one possible. The upper-tier species protested, of course. They sent formal complaints to the council. They argued that unrestricted knowledge sharing was dangerous, destabilizing, irresponsible. Yuna listened to every complaint politely, nodded, and continued teaching. When a Velen official confronted her directly and demanded to know why she refused to stop, she looked at him with genuine confusion and said, "Why would I stop helping people who need help?" He did not have an answer for that. No one did. Jinu's translation corps had grown from 1 human to a network of 40 translators from 12 different species, all trained in what Jinu called honest communication. The concept was painfully simple. Translate what was actually said, including the parts that were meant to be hidden. Do not soften insults. Do not hide manipulation. Do not serve any political master. Serve the truth. The effect on Accord diplomacy was like opening a window in a room that had been sealed for centuries. Suddenly, everyone could smell the rot. Negotiations that used to take months now took days, because no one could hide behind clever language anymore. Minor species who had been tricked for generations into accepting bad deals suddenly understood what was being done to them. Trade agreements were renegotiated. Resource treaties were rewritten. Power that had been concentrated at the top for centuries began to flow outward. Jinu himself remained the quietest person on the station. He did not give speeches. He did not seek attention. He trained his translators, mediated disputes when asked, and spent his evenings learning his 7th Accord language. When someone asked him what drove him, he said, "Everyone deserves to understand what is being said about them." Hana's medical initiative had become the first universal healthcare system in Accord history. Basic care, free of charge, available to every species on every station, regardless of tier. It was funded, not by the council, but by the minor species themselves, who pooled resources in a way no one had thought possible before, because no one had asked them to work together before. Hana trained over 200 alien medics in the first 3 months. She adapted human medical principles for each species, developing new treatment protocols that combined the best of human knowledge with the biological expertise of each world. She worked 18-hour days and never complained. When a journalist from one of the major Accord news services asked her how humans had developed such advanced medical practices, Hana laughed, a warm, tired laugh, and said, "We got sick a lot. We hurt each other a lot. And we decided we did not want to keep doing that. So we learned how to heal." Do-hyun's training program was perhaps the most unexpected change of all. He had been asked to teach combat, but what he taught was something far more valuable: control. Species from across the Accord sent their warriors to train with the quiet human who had put Goran on the floor. They expected to learn fighting techniques. Instead, Do-hyun taught them how to read a situation before it became a fight, how to understand an opponent's emotions from the way they moved, how to de-escalate tension with posture and voice and eye contact, how to choose the right moment to act, and more importantly, the right moment not to. The strongest warrior, Do-hyun told his students, is not the one who wins every fight. It is the one who prevents the fight from happening. The Dreth warriors struggled with this philosophy the most, and embraced it the hardest. Goran had become Do-hyun's most dedicated student. The massive stone-skinned warrior sat beside the small human every morning, and practiced breathing exercises and awareness drills. Other Dreth mocked him at first. They stopped mocking when they saw the change. Goran came to Do-hyun one evening as the station's lights dimmed for the night cycle. He sat beside him on the observation deck and was quiet for a long time. "My people believe that strength is the only truth," Goran said finally. "That the strong survive and the weak do not. And that is the way of things." Do-hyun waited. "You showed me that strength without wisdom is just noise," Goran said. His deep voice was rough, with something that might have been emotion, in a species that was not supposed to feel it. "I have been strong my whole life. I have never been wise. I think I would like to learn." Do-hyun reached into his bag and pulled out a small bottle of something from Earth, a drink the humans called soju. He poured 2 cups and offered one to Goran. They sat together in silence, watching the stars. A human and a Dreth, side by side, sharing a drink at the edge of the galaxy. It was the most ordinary thing in the world, and the most extraordinary thing anyone on the station had ever seen. The Accord Council offered Taeho a seat. The 13th seat, a new chair, added to a table that had held 12 for as long as anyone could remember. The honor was unprecedented. The symbolism was enormous. Every species on the station watched the ceremony, waiting for the human captain to accept his place among the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Taeho stood before the council, looked at the empty chair, and said no. The silence that followed was so deep, it seemed to swallow sound itself. "We did not come here to lead you," Taeho said, his voice calm and steady. "We came here to find neighbors. The moment we sit above you, we become the same thing that held you back. You need something else." The council debated for 2 days. In the end, they created something new, a role that had never existed in Accord history. They called it Bridge Species. Not a ruler, not a servant, a connector. The humans would serve as engineers, translators, medics, and mediators between the 12 species. Not above anyone, between everyone. Taeho accepted, as Sara came to see him one last time. Her luminous form filled the small human quarters with gentle light. She had lived for millennia. She had watched species rise and dominate and stagnate and fall. She had seen the same pattern repeat 1,000 times. Power gathered, power hoarded, power corrupted, power collapsed. In all my years, she said, the pattern never changed. Species grow strong, and then they grow cruel, and then they grow brittle, and then they break. I believed it was the nature of consciousness itself, a law as fixed as gravity. She looked at Tejo. Then you walked through a dead gate on a broken ship and started helping people for no reason, and the pattern broke. Her light flickered, the lith equivalent of a deep breath. You did not conquer us. You did not submit to us. You simply walked in and started being kind. We had no protocol for that, no defense against it, no way to predict it. Tejo smiled. We are not that complicated. We just believe that things can be better than they are, and we are too stubborn to stop trying. Isara's light grew brighter for a moment. That stubbornness may be the most powerful force in the universe. Tilly finished her record on a quiet evening in the archives. She had been writing for 6 months, documenting everything the humans had done, every change they had caused, every moment that mattered. Her file had grown from a curiosity into the most important historical document the Accord had ever produced. She wrote the final entry carefully, reading each word aloud to herself before committing it to the record. Before the humans came, the Accord was a machine, precise, ancient, and slowly dying. Every species knew its place, and no one dared to question why. Then 5 of them walked through a forgotten gate on a ship held together with stubbornness and hope, and nothing acted the same. They did not fire a single weapon. They did not claim a single system. They simply refused to accept that the way things were was the way things had to be. And that, in all the galaxies, in all the ages, was the most dangerous thing any species had ever done. She saved the file and closed her console. Then she sat in the quiet of the archives and smiled. On the observation deck, Tejo stood at the viewport and looked out at the stars. The Accord spread out before him, stations and ships and worlds connected by gates that were alive and growing for the first time in centuries. Behind him, the station hummed with a new kind of energy. Not the cold efficiency of the old Accord, something warmer, something messier, something alive. Yuna appeared beside him, wiping grease from her hands with a rag. The Dawnbreaker is repaired, she said. Better than new, actually. I borrowed a few ideas. Tejo laughed. Where do we go next? Gate 07 was the first forgotten gate, she said. But Tilly found references to others, gates that the founders built on the far edges of the network, gates that no one has opened in 1,000 cycles. Tejo looked at the stars and thought about all the things out there that no one had found yet, all the gates waiting to open, all the problems waiting to be solved. Then that is where we go, he said. The Dawnbreaker detached from Station Prime and turned toward the deep black. Behind it, the Accord watched, not with fear, not with suspicion, but with something new, something that felt a lot like hope. And across the galaxy, in archives and homes and ships and worlds, beings of every shape and size told each other the story of the 5 small creatures who came through a dead gate and changed everything. Not with armies, not with weapons, not with threats or demands or power. With stubbornness, with kindness, with the simple, unshakable belief that things could always be better. The humans had entered the system, and nothing acted the same.